It was the summer of 1997, and I was 24, a graduate student from overseas, studying in Central Oregon. I was grinding through my degree, planning to head back to Europe once I finished. Life was full, late nights hitting the books, cheap diner coffee, and driving my beat-up 1980s convertible. That car was a rusty old thing I picked up cheap in Portland, but I loved it. It got me where I needed to go, even if it creaked and grumbled. That summer, my girlfriend Maria flew in for a month-long visit. We'd been together 2 years, keeping in touch with letters and long phone calls. Back home, folks figured we'd get married after I graduated, but I wasn't sold on the idea. Maria was incredible, gorgeous, with long black hair that shimmered in the sun and a way of moving that turned heads. She was tough and smart, but she could get paranoid, always thinking trouble was around the corner. It led to arguments sometimes, and I wasn't sure about tying the knot. Still, I cared about her, and her visit was a chance to have some fun. We planned a road trip down Oregon's coast, dreaming of a classic adventure. We'd drive the coastal highway, hit places like Astoria, Newport, Coos Bay, and Santa Clara, maybe even swing into Northern California. We'd take my convertible, top down, soaking in the breeze and sunshine. Maria was thrilled, her smile bright. I was worn out from school, but her excitement kept me going. The trip kicked off great. We loved Astoria's windy cliffs, cracked up at the quirky shops in Newport, and munched on fish tacos in Coos Bay. But the long drives took a toll. By the time we reached Santa Clara, I was wiped out. My back hurt from gripping the wheel, and my eyes were heavy. It was late afternoon, the sun dipping low, painting the sky pink and gold. Maria pointed at a motel near the beach. "That one," she said. "It's by the water. We can swim tomorrow." The motel looked tired, with a neon vacancy sign that blinked on and off. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars parked under scraggly pine trees. I pulled in, tires crunching on dirt, and shut off the engine. The air smelled like seaweed and gasoline, and I could hear waves crashing nearby. I was exhausted, but Maria was still full of energy. "I'll check us in," she said, hopping out. "You grab the bags." I nodded, glad to stretch my cramped legs. As I pulled our suitcases from the trunk, I noticed how quiet the motel was. The rooms were dark, like nobody was staying there. It felt odd for a summer evening in Santa Clara, a town usually buzzing with tourists. I brushed it off, blaming my tiredness, and followed Maria to the front desk. The lobby was stuck in the past, with faded green carpet and walls that smelled like old smoke. A guy stood behind the counter, tall with light brown hair. He was maybe 28, handsome but in a slick way, like he was sizing you up. He smiled at Maria, staring at her a bit too long. It bugged me, but I kept quiet. "Welcome," he said, his voice smooth. "I've got a great room for you." Grabbed a key and led us up some outdoor stairs to the second floor. The motel was long and thin, with rooms facing the ocean. He stopped at a room smack in the middle, next to a door labeled "Staff Only." He unlocked the door and let us in. The room was basic: a saggy bed, a scratched nightstand, and a bathroom that smelled damp. But there was a huge mirror on one wall, right across from the bed. It wasn't hanging, it was built into the wall, like it was part of it. That felt strange, especially since it was next to the staff room. A chill ran through me, like someone could be watching. "Why this room?" I asked, setting the bags down. "There's tons of empty ones. Why not downstairs or at the end?" The guy shrugged. his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Best view," he said, but he didn't look at me. He left and the door clicked shut. Maria started unpacking, not worried at all. "It's fine," she said, flipping her hair. "You're just tired." I walked to the mirror and touched it. It was solid, not budging. "This is creepy," I said. "It's right by that staff room." She laughed. "You're being silly. Go get the rest of our stuff." I sighed and headed back to the car. The air was cool now, the sun almost gone. As I reached the parking lot, I saw the desk guy come out of the staff room, locking the door. He glanced at me, his face blank, then walked to the lobby. My gut twisted. Was he in there when we were in the room? Was he listening? Back upstairs, I grabbed a scratchy blanket from the closet and tossed it over the mirror. Maria rolled her eyes. "If he's some creep, he's not getting a show," I said, trying to sound light. But I wasn't joking. We lay down for a nap, too worn out to keep going. The bed squeaked and the room felt stuffy, but I crashed hard. When I woke up, it was dark outside. The blanket was still over the mirror, and Maria was stretching, ready to go eat. "Let's find food and check out the town," she said. I nodded, but that mirror stuck in my head. We headed out. The parking lot was busier now, maybe half full. "See," Maria said, "it's normal. You're too paranoid." I felt a bit foolish. She was usually the paranoid one, so maybe I was overthinking it. We got in the car and she drove, giving me a break. I was thankful. She was a much better driver than me. Back home, she learned on stick-shift cars in tight streets. I'd only started driving in Oregon, and my convertible was a clunker. We ate at a diner, burgers and fries, and drove around Santa Clara. The town was lively. Lights, music, people hanging out. But it was getting late, and we didn't have GPS back then. I had a paper map of the town, and I tried reading it with a tiny keychain flashlight. The light was dim, and I squinted to see the street names. Maria drove, following my directions, but I could tell we were a little lost. We were near the beach, but not on the right road to get back to the motel. That's when Maria looked in the rearview mirror and frowned. "That van's following us," she said. I turned around. Behind us, one lane over, was an old gray van. It looked run down, with dark windows you couldn't see through. "You're imagining things," I said, trying to stay calm. "It's just a car." "No," she said, her voice tight. "It's been behind us for 3 blocks. I turned twice and it's still there. It's not passing even when I slow down." I looked again. The van was close, matching our speed. The road was quiet, barely any other cars. My heart started pounding. "Maybe it's a coincidence," I said, but I didn't believe it. Maria's hands gripped the wheel. "I'm not paranoid this time," she said. "Something's wrong." I looked at the map, trying to think. "Okay, we need to get back to the beach road where the motel is. There's a traffic light up ahead. We can make a U-turn there to head the right way. If they follow, we'll know." She nodded, her jaw tight. I knew she was scared, but she was a great driver. The light was a block away, and a sign said, "No U-turn." The van was still behind us, a little to the right. The light turned red, and Maria stopped. I could hear the van's engine, low and rough. My mouth went dry. Then Maria hit the gas. The car roared, shooting through the red light. She yanked the wheel, making an illegal U-turn, tires squealing. I grabbed the door, my heart racing. The van sped up, swerving into our lane. It made the same U-turn, its tires screaming, and came right up behind us, so close I could see its headlights glaring in our mirror. They were blinding, like they wanted us to crash. "Go, go!" I shouted, panic hitting me hard. Maria floored it, the engine whining. The van stayed on us, inches from our bumper. We were on the beach road now, a one-lane street with parked cars on the right and a concrete wall on the left. There was nowhere to turn, just straight ahead. We were going fast, maybe 60 miles an hour, way over the limit. The van matched us, not letting up. My mind was spinning. We couldn't lead them to the motel. What did they want? Why us? I thought about my car, old with Central Oregon plates. Maybe they saw Maria driving and thought she was alone. Maybe they didn't even see me in the dark. The idea made my stomach drop. More cars joined the road behind the van, their lights mixing with its glare. The traffic got thicker, all of us speeding down the narrow road. Maria's face was set, her knuckles white on the wheel. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice shaky. "I'm thinking," she said, her eyes darting to the mirror. The van was still there, but now there were 4 or 5 cars behind it, all bunched up. I could see the motel's neon sign in the distance, maybe a few hundred yards away. We couldn't go there, not with them right behind us. Then Maria did something wild. She slammed on the brakes and jerked the wheel to the right. The car skidded, tires screeching, and slid into a tiny parking spot between 2 parked cars. It was so tight I thought we'd hit something, but she nailed it, the car jolting to a stop. The van had no choice. It couldn't stop without the cars behind it crashing into it. It shot past us, followed by the other cars, their headlights flashing by. My hands were shaking, my breath coming in gasps. "That was insane," I said, staring at Maria. Her chest was rising and falling fast, but her eyes were sharp, like she was still ready for anything. "We can't stay here," she said, her voice steady, even though I knew she was scared. She hit the gas again, pulling back into traffic. We were behind the van now, at least 8 or 9 cars back. Its taillights were just a faint red glow in the distance. They couldn't see us anymore. The motel's neon sign was close, flickering against the night sky. Maria swung into the parking lot, tires crunching on dirt. We parked in a dark corner, far from the entrance, and grabbed our bags, moving fast. I kept glancing back as we ran to our room, half expecting that gray van to come roaring in. But there was nothing, just the hum of cars on the road and the chirp of crickets in the warm air. My heart was still pounding, my shirt sticking to my back with sweat. We fumbled with the key, got inside, and locked the door. I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath, while Maria dropped her bag and sat on the bed. The room was the same as before. The lumpy bed, the damp bathroom smell, the blanket covering that creepy mirror. I was glad it was covered. I didn't want to see my own terrified face. We sat there not talking, just listening. Every car that passed outside made me jump, like the van was coming back. The motel creaked, and I kept imagining that desk guy sneaking into the staff room next door. "Who were they?" Maria whispered, pulling her knees up to her chest. Her usual spark was gone, and she looked small, almost fragile. "I don't know," I said, running a hand through my sweaty hair. "Maybe they saw you driving and thought you were alone. My car's got Central Oregon plates, looks like a junker. Maybe they thought we were easy targets, just some lost tourists." She nodded, her face pale in the dim light from the bedside lamp. "I'm glad I was driving," she said quietly. I let out a shaky laugh. "You were amazing. I'd have crashed us for sure. She gave a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. We sat there holding hands, her fingers cold in mine. The night dragged on, and we didn't sleep much. I kept getting up to check the window, peeking through the curtains at the parking lot. It was quiet, just a few cars under the pine trees, their shadows swaying in the breeze. No gray van, no headlights. But I couldn't relax. That mirror, the desk guy's weird smile, the van's blinding lights, it all kept playing in my head. Around 3 a.m., Maria curled up under the blanket, her breathing finally slowing as she dozed off. I stayed awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, listening to the ocean in the distance. I thought about our road trip, how it started so fun, so full of hope. Astoria's cliffs, Newport's shops, Coos Bay's tacos. It felt like a different world now. This night had changed something, made the road feel darker, like danger was hiding around every corner. When the sky started to lighten, gray and foggy, I shook Maria awake. "We should go," I said. "I don't want to stay here." She nodded, rubbing her eyes. We packed fast, stuffing clothes into our bags. The room felt even creepier in the morning light, like it was watching us. I checked the mirror one last time, making sure the blanket was still up. I didn't want to know what was behind it. We checked out at the front desk. The slick desk guy wasn't there, just an older woman who barely looked at us as she took the key. I wanted to ask about the mirror, the staff room, that guy's weird vibe, but I didn't. I just wanted to get out. We threw our bags in the car and hit the road, the convertible rattling as we pulled onto the coastal highway. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting that gray van to appear. It never did. The road was quiet, the ocean sparkling under the morning sun. Maria was silent, staring out the window, her face tired but calm. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, her voice soft. "Just glad we're okay." "Me too," I said, gripping the wheel. I thought about the rest of our trip. We'd planned to see Northern California, maybe dip into Baja, but now I wasn't sure. The open road didn't feel free anymore. It felt like a place where anything could happen. We didn't talk much as we drove north, back toward Central Oregon. The trip had changed us, and so had that night. Maria went back home a few weeks later, and over time we drifted apart. The letters got shorter, the calls less frequent. Maybe it was the distance, or maybe it was the weight of that night, the way it showed us how fragile things could be. Santa Clara is supposed to be a beautiful place. Beaches, sunsets, all that tourist stuff. But for me, it's tied to that motel, that mirror, that van chasing us through the dark. Every time I drive a quiet road now, I check my mirrors, looking for headlights that get too close. I don't think I'll ever forget it. The road trip was supposed to be an adventure, a story to tell. It was, but not the kind I expected. It was the kind that sticks with you, the kind that makes you wonder what's out there, waiting just beyond the headlights. Every summer since I was a kid, I'd make the same 6-hour drive to my Uncle Tom's cabin by Lake Willow. It was a small, cozy place nestled deep in the woods of northern Michigan, with a dock that creaked under your feet and water so clear you could see the fish darting below. The cabin was nothing fancy, but it was special. Somewhere along the way, it became a family tradition for all my mom's side to pile up there for a week. Me, my cousins, aunts, uncles, and a mess of kids running around. We'd swim, fish, roast marshmallows, and tell stories under the stars. Those trips were the highlight of my summer, a chance to hang out with my cousins, especially Jake and Sarah, who I was tight with. We'd stay up late laughing until our sides hurt, making memories I still carry. The only part I didn't love was the drive. 6 hours might not sound bad, but when you're alone in a car, no one to talk to, no radio signal half the time, it feels like forever. The highway to the cabin cuts through thick forest, miles of pine trees so dense they block out the sun. During the day, you might see a truck or two, but at night, it's a ghost road. No cars, no lights, just you and the trees. I'd usually blast music or talk to myself to stay awake, but even that got old after a while. This story happened a few years ago, when I was 25, making my usual drive to the cabin. I always tried to do it during the day, but that year, life got in the way. I just pulled a 12-hour shift at the hardware store where I worked, unloading crates and helping cranky customers. I was beat, my back aching, my eyes gritty. But my family was expecting me at the cabin by morning, so I had no choice. I had to drive through the night. The idea of cruising that empty highway in the dark didn't thrill me, but I figured I'd manage. I'd done the trip 100 times. Before I left, I grabbed a coffee from a gas station near my apartment, the kind that tastes like burnt dirt but keeps you awake. My car, a beat-up 1990s sedan, was parked out front. I'd lent it to my brother Matt while I was at work, and he swore he'd filled the tank. "All good, man," he'd said, tossing me the keys. I trusted him, didn't even check the gauge. Big mistake. I hit the road around 9 p.m., the sky already black. The highway stretched out, a narrow ribbon of asphalt swallowed by trees. My headlights cut through the dark, lighting up the road but not much else. The radio fizzled out after 20 minutes, leaving me with just the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of wind in the pines. I cracked the window to let in some cool air, hoping it'd keep me sharp. The night was warm, the kind of sticky summer heat that makes your shirt cling to your skin. About 3 hours in, I was halfway to the cabin, deep in the forest. My coffee was gone, and I was fighting to keep my eyes open. That's when I glanced at the dashboard and saw the gas gauge. The needle was buried in the red, barely above empty. My stomach dropped. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. Matt hadn't filled the tank. He'd either forgotten or lied to get out of it. I cursed him under my breath, my hands tightening on the wheel. I started scanning the road signs, looking for any hint of a gas station. Out here, they were rare. The highway didn't have rest stops or shiny 24-hour stations like in the city. You might find a small one off an exit, but they were few and far between. My car wasn't going to make it much farther. I could feel it sputtering already, the engine hesitating. I didn't have the luxury of being picky. I'd stop at the first station I saw, no matter how sketchy. A few minutes later, I spotted a sign. Not a proper road sign, but a wooden board stuck in the dirt, the kind you'd see for a roadside fruit stand. In sloppy red spray paint, it read, "Gas station, next exit." It looked homemade, which gave me a weird feeling, but I didn't have a choice. The needle was practically on zero. I slowed down, flicked on my blinker, and took the exit. The road off the highway was narrow, paved at first but quickly turning to gravel. Trees pressed in on both sides, their branches scraping the car like fingers. I drove maybe a mile, the road getting bumpier, my headlights bouncing over ruts and rocks. No signs, no lights, just darkness. I was starting to think I'd made a mistake when my beams caught something up ahead. A building on the right side of the road. It was a gas station, but not the kind I'd hoped for. The place looked like it had been dead for years. The pumps were gone, just rusted metal stubs sticking out of cracked concrete. The building itself was a wreck. Most of the windows were shattered, glass glinting in my headlights. The roof sagged, half collapsed, and vines crawled up the walls like they were claiming it. A faded sign above the door read, "Willow Fuel," but it was barely legible. There was no way this place had gas or anything else. I pulled into the lot, the gravel crunching under my tires, and checked the gauge again. The needle was flat on empty. I wasn't going anywhere. "Great," I muttered, slumping back in my seat. I grabbed my phone, but there was no signal, not a single bar. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, that wasn't a surprise. My only option was AAA. I'd called them once before, years ago, when my tire blew out. I dug out my membership card, used the light from my phone to read the number, and called. The operator was nice but sounded tired. I explained I was out of gas, stuck at an abandoned station off the highway. Giving my location was tricky. I didn't know the exact road, just the exit number and the Willow Fuel sign. "We'll send someone," she said. "Might take a while. You're pretty remote." I thanked her, hung up, and turned off the car to save what little gas I had left. Then I settled in to wait. I figured it'd be an hour, maybe two, before the Ermawe truck showed up. The forest was quiet, just the chirp of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. I leaned my seat back, trying to relax, but the darkness was heavy, pressing against the windows. I kept the doors locked and the windows cracked for air, the heat still thick even at night. My eyes drifted to the ruined gas station, its broken windows like empty eyes staring back. After about 30 minutes, my eyes were adjusting to the dark. I was staring at the building, zoning out, when I thought I saw something move inside. A shadow, maybe, flickering behind one of the shattered windows. I blinked, leaning forward, my heart picking up. Just your imagination, I told myself. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept watching, squinting into the dark, hoping it was just a trick of the light. Then I heard it, a voice low and raspy, like a whisper but loud enough to cut through the quiet. "Hey buddy, come over here." My blood ran cold. The voice came from the left side of the building, near the edge of the lot. I snapped my head toward it, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. There was a figure standing there, just outside the glow of my headlights. I couldn't see much, just a dark shape, tall and thin, wearing what looked like heavy winter clothes, way too warm for summer. He was still, like he was waiting for me to move. I froze, my hands gripping the steering wheel. My windows were cracked open an inch, enough to hear him clearly. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to start the car and try to drive, but I knew I wouldn't get far. The figure took a step toward me, slow and deliberate, and my stomach twisted. He was coming closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. When he reached the passenger side window, he leaned down, his face just outside the glass. I could barely make him out in the dark. A scruffy beard, sunken eyes, and a smell like damp clothes and dirt. He looked rough, like he'd been living in the woods. "Hey," he whispered, his voice low. "You looking for gas?" I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. Yeah, I said, barely getting the words out. I didn't want to talk to him, but I didn't know what else to say. He nodded, his eyes glinting in the faint light. "Got a container inside," he said. "Free of charge. Just come with me." My heart was racing. Inside? Into that broken down building? No way. The place looked like it could collapse any second, and this guy gave me the creeps. His voice was too calm, too eager. I shook my head, my voice shaky. "No, I'm good," I said. "I'm waiting for AAA." He didn't move. His face went blank, like a mask. If he'd been smiling before, it was gone now. He just stood there, staring at me through the window, his eyes locked on mine. It felt like forever, maybe a full minute, neither of us saying anything. I wanted to look away, but I was afraid to. My hand hovered near the keys in the ignition, even though I knew the car wouldn't start. Then I heard it, the most beautiful sound in the world. Gravel crunching, louder this time, and the low rumble of an engine. Headlights swept across the lot, lighting up the gas station. It was the AAA truck. The guy's head whipped toward the sound, and in a flash, he bolted. He ran back toward the building, disappearing around the corner into the trees. That's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. As the truck's headlights lit up the lot, I caught movement near the front of the gas station. 7 or 8 figures, people, stood up from behind a row of overgrown bushes. They'd been hiding there, crouched low, out of sight. They didn't say a word, just took off running, following the first guy into the forest. Their shapes vanished into the dark, swallowed by the trees. I sat there, my heart hammering, trying to process what I'd just seen. Those people had been there the whole time, waiting. If I'd gotten out of the car, if I'd followed that guy, I'd have walked right into, what? A trap? Something worse? My mind raced with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. The AAA truck pulled up beside me, and a big guy climbed out. Tall, maybe 6'5", built like a linebacker. He walked to my window, his face confused. "You call for gas?" he asked, his voice deep. "Yeah," I said, my voice shaky. "That's me." He squinted toward the trees, then back at me. "Who were all those people? The ones that just ran off?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. The sign, the abandoned station, the guy offering gas, the others hiding in the bushes. His eyes widened as I talked, his hand resting on the gas can he'd brought. "Man, that's creepy," he said when I finished. "You're lucky I got here when I did." "No kidding," I said, my hand still trembling. He offered to call the sheriff's department, and I nodded. "Yeah, let's do that." While he filled my tank, I used his phone to call the nearest town sheriff. The dispatcher listened to my story, said they'd send someone out, but warned it might take a while since I was so far from anything. I didn't want to stick around. The AAA guy finished up, wished me luck, and I got back on the highway, my heart still racing. The rest of the drive was a blur. I kept my eyes on the road, checking my mirrors for any sign of that gray van or those figures. The forest seemed darker now, the trees looming like they were hiding something. I didn't stop again until I reached the cabin, just as the sun was coming up. My family was already there, laughing and unpacking coolers. I tried to act normal, but I was shaken. Later that day, I got a call from the sheriff's department. They'd checked the gas station, but found no one. No footprints, no signs of anyone living there. Just an old, abandoned building, rotting away. They figured the people must have known the woods well to disappear like that. It didn't make me feel better. That night at the cabin, sitting by the fire with my cousins, I told them the story. Jake's eyes got wide and Sarah hugged me, saying she'd never drive that highway alone. Uncle Tom shook his head, muttering about weird folks in the woods. I laughed it off, but inside I was still rattled. I've been back to the cabin every summer since, but I never take the night drive anymore. I check the gas gauge twice before I leave, and I stick to daytime routes. That homemade sign, the guy's empty stare, those figures running into the trees, they're burned into my memory. I don't know what they wanted or why there were so many of them. All I know is I'm thankful for that AAA truck showing up when it did. Out there, in the middle of nowhere, on a road where no one would hear you scream, I came close to something bad, and I'm just glad I made it out. I was 17, just over a year into having my driver's license, and already hooked on the freedom of driving. My name's Caleb, and I grew up in a small town in western Kentucky, the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and the biggest deal is the annual Harvest Festival. Our house sat on the edge of town, surrounded by soybean fields and dirt roads that went on forever. Driving was my way out. Windows down, music up, nobody telling me what to do. I'd saved up from working at a hardware store to buy an old 1998 pickup truck, gray with a scratched-up hood. It wasn't much to look at, but it got me around, and it was mine. That summer, 2004, I got a job delivering sandwiches for Mike's Deli, the only sandwich shop in town. It was a good job for a kid, decent tips, free food, and an excuse to drive all evening. Most deliveries were local, but sometimes I'd get orders for houses way out in the country where the roads were gravel and the nearest neighbor was miles away. I liked those runs. The country roads were peaceful, and at night the stars were so clear it felt like you were in another world. The night it happened was a Thursday in August, warm and humid, the kind of night where the air feels heavy. I was working the late shift, which meant I'd be out until midnight or later. The deli was hopping, orders piling up, Mike barking at us to move faster. Around 11 p.m., I grabbed a delivery, 2 bags of sandwiches and a few cans of soda, going to a house about 20 miles out, down Willow Creek Road. It was a long haul, but the customer had promised a good tip over the phone, so I didn't mind. I loaded the bags into my truck, set them on the passenger seat, and headed out. The town was quiet, the grocery store and diner already closed. I turned onto Willow Creek Road, a thin strip of asphalt that twisted through fields and clumps of trees. My truck's headlights lit the way, bouncing over cracks in the road. I had the windows down, the sticky air rushing in, and my radio playing a mixed CD, the volume low so I could hear the frogs croaking outside. The first few miles were no big deal. I passed a couple of trailers, their yard lights on, and a silo with a feed company logo painted on it. The road got darker as I went, the trees getting thicker, their shadows swallowing the stars. I checked the address on the order slip, 819 Willow Creek Road. It was still a good ways off, out in the boonies. I'd driven this road a few times, but not often, and never this late. The clock on my dash said 11:15 p.m. I figured I'd drop off the food, get paid, and be back in town by 12:30. About 12 miles out, the road got bumpier, the asphalt giving way to patches of gravel. My truck shook, the shocks groaning. I eased off the gas, not wanting to blow a tire. The radio started fizzing, static cutting through the music. I fiddled with the knob, but it was no use, so I switched it off. The quiet was loud, just the engine's rumble and the hum of bugs. I kept driving, watching for the house number, The fields turned to dense woods, the trees tall and black, like walls on either side. Then I saw something, a flash up ahead, dim at first, like a light flickering through the trees. I leaned forward, trying to figure it out. The road bent a little, and as I rounded the curve, my headlights hit something that made my heart skip. 4 figures stood in the middle of the road, spread out to block it. They wore dark jackets, hoods up, and plain masks, gray, maybe cloth, with dark slits for eyes and mouths. One held a flashlight, swinging it side to side, the beam slicing the dark. The others had baseball bats holding them tight, like they meant business. I hit the brakes hard, my truck sliding a bit on the gravelly edge. My chest was tight, my hands sweaty on the wheel. I stopped maybe 40 feet away, my headlights catching their masks. They didn't move, just stood there staring. The flashlight guy raised the beam, pointing it at my windshield, the light stinging my eyes. I blinked, trying to think. What was going on? A joke? A holdup? Something worse? I'd heard about pranks out here, kids messing with drivers, maybe scaring them for laughs. But this didn't feel like that. The masks were too creepy, too simple, like they were meant to hide more than just faces. And those bats, they weren't cheap plastic. I could see the wood, solid and worn in my lights. I looked around, hoping for an escape. The road was tight, with steep banks on both sides and trees beyond. Turning around would be tough, and backing up in the dark was risky. My best shot was forward, through them. I honked the horn quick and loud, hoping they'd scatter. They didn't. The flashlight guy kept the beam on me, and one of the others tapped his bat on the ground, slow, like a warning. My throat felt dry. I grabbed my phone from the dashboard, an old brick of a thing. I checked for signal. Nothing. Not a single bar. I was on my own, miles from anyone. I tried to stay cool, think it through. Maybe they just wanted to spook me. I was a teenager, driving a delivery truck. Not exactly a big score, but the way they stood, so calm, so ready, made my skin prickle. My dad's voice popped into my head. "Trust your instincts, Caleb." My instincts were telling me to get out of there, fast. I shifted into drive, my foot ready on the gas. The road was clear past them, maybe 60 yards before it turned again. If I could push through, I'd be okay. But they were spread out, covering the whole road. I'd have to drive straight at them, hope they jump aside. The thought made my stomach knot. What if they didn't move? What if they hit the truck? I honked again, holding it down this time, the sound echoing. "Get out of the way," I shouted, my voice shaky. No reaction. The flashlight guy tilted his head like he was sizing me up. Then he stepped forward, slow, the beam still on me. The others moved too, closing in, their bats up a bit higher. My heart was hammering now, my hands trembling. I didn't have time to wait. I clenched the wheel, muttered, "Here goes," and slammed the gas. The truck surged forward, the engine growling. The figures froze for a split second, like they didn't see it coming. I aimed for the space between the middle two, my headlights in their faces. At the last moment, they dove out of the way, scrambling to the sides. Something banged against my truck. A bat, maybe, hitting the tailgate. I didn't look back. I kept going, the tires kicking up dust, my hands shaking so bad I could hardly steer. I cleared them, the road open ahead. I checked my mirror. They were back in the road, standing, their masks lit by my taillights. The flashlight beam chased me, but it was getting weaker. I took the next curve fast, the truck sliding a little, and didn't let up. My breath was ragged, my heart still racing. I drove another mile, maybe two, before I slowed down, making sure they weren't behind me. Soon I spotted a mailbox with 819 scrawled on it. The delivery house. It was a low brick house, lights on, a cat darting across the lawn. I pulled into the driveway, my hands still shaky. I grabbed the sandwich bags, checked the truck, a new scratch on the tailgate. Shallow, but there. I didn't care. I just wanted to finish and get back to town. The customer was an older woman, nice, with a dog yapping at her feet. She paid, gave me a $10 tip, and asked if I was all right. "You seem nervous," she said. I managed a smile, said it was just a late night, and left. I didn't tell her what happened. I wasn't sure she'd buy it, and I didn't want to sound like a scared kid. I got back in the truck and headed for town, taking a different road. Hickory Lane, longer but busier, with more farms. I kept watching my mirrors, expecting those masks to pop up. They didn't. The drive back was quiet, just the engine's hum and the warm air through the windows. My CD kicked back on, the static gone, but I turned it off. I needed the quiet to think. When I got back to Mike's Deli, it was after 1 a.m. The shop was empty, just Mike mopping the floor. He looked up as I came in, saw my face, and stopped. "You okay, Caleb?" he asked. I told him the whole thing. The masks, the bats, the flashlight, how I drove through. His jaw dropped, and he set the mop down. "You got lucky, kid," he said. "That road's trouble at night." He called the sheriff while I sat in the back, drinking a soda, trying to settle my nerves. The deputy, a woman named Harris, showed up about 20 minutes later. I told her everything, showed her the scratch on my truck. She took notes, said she'd check Willow Creek Road, but warned it'd be tough to find anyone out there. "Could be kids pulling a stunt," she said, "but it sounds off." She asked if I wanted to file a report. I said I just wanted to go home. Mike sent me home early, told me to take a day off. I drove slow, the town dark except for a few streetlights. My parents were in bed when I got home, so I didn't tell them until breakfast. Mom got upset, said I shouldn't be out so late. Dad was quiet but concerned, told me to stay off back roads after dark. I nodded, but I didn't tell them how much it shook me, how I kept seeing those masks every time I closed my eyes. The sheriff called a few days later. They'd searched Willow Creek Road, found no one, no tracks, no bats, nothing. Just some gravel churned up where I'd sped off. Harris said it might have been teens from another town, messing around, but she admitted it felt strange, too planned for a prank. They'd patrol more, but without evidence, that was it. I went back to work, but I wasn't the same. I stuck to town deliveries, let the other drivers take the country orders. Mike didn't push, said he got it. I still drove my truck for fun, but not at night, and never down Willow Creek Road. That road felt different now, like it was watching me. I'd see it sometimes passing by on other routes, and my hands would grip the wheel tighter. My friends heard about it at the festival that fall, and it got around school when the semester started. Some thought it was awesome, said I was gutsy for driving through. Others said I was making it up, that it was just a story. I didn't care. I knew what happened. Those masks, those bats, the way they stood like they owned the night. I didn't need anyone to believe me. Now I'm older, living in a different town, but I still visit my family, driving those country roads sometimes. I keep my tank full, my phone charged, and my eyes open. Every once in a while, I'll catch a shadow in the dark, a flicker that doesn't fit, and I'll remember that night. Willow Creek Road's just a road like any other in Kentucky, but for me, it's where I learned how quick things can go wrong and how close I came to something I'll never understand.